I think the highlight of this week's episode of RWBY is the RWBY and Oscar scene. Easily the best moment. And so, with that being said, the best way to summarize this episode of RWBY Volume 5 is just 3 conversations. That's basically what this is. To kind of get into details, you have the conversation with Sun and Blake, then you have the conversation with RWBY and Oscar, and then we have Ilya and then the brothers, so we just have 3 conversations. That's basically what the episode is. Does that mean that the episode is bad? No. So I want to get into that first. So I've been hearing a lot of complaints today. Many have told me on social media, like, Chibi, well, what was your thoughts on that RWBY episode? It felt very slow. It felt like there was no progression. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I've seen much slower. I've seen much worse. And personally, I like this episode. Now, obviously, there was some things that were rather slow. The only slow part of the episode was probably the Blake stuff, Blake and Sun. But besides that, the other 2 moments throughout the episode with, like, for instance, RWBY and Oscar, but also the scene with the brothers and Ilya, those scenes were very important, progressed the plot, and really emotional in a lot of different ways. And so, I don't think this episode is necessarily as bad as many are thinking, because I've been seeing a lot of complaints today, especially as soon as the episode came out. Many are like saying, Chibi, this episode, not that good. Like, yeah, how do you feel about it? And so, personally, like I said, I actually like the episode. It's always slow at the Blake stuff, but besides that, it's a very good episode in terms of pacing-wise. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about the Blake and Sun stuff. So it's just a matter of time. It was just a matter of time until we had, like, an episode focus a little bit more on Blake and Sun, and overall, the beginning part of the episode, it did progress some things, and it let us get to see Blake's viewpoint on Adam, how she feels about Ilya, how she feels about the White Fang, how she feels about Sun. We got all these little details, for instance, showcasing how Blake feels about each individual person that's been around her, especially when she was explaining how she feels about Yang, how she feels about Weiss, how she feels about RWBY, you know, like someone that's pure, someone that's strong, you know, someone that's defiant, someone that's earnest, someone that is spiteful. She was just describing people with a word, which is really nice, just to see her perspective and how she views individual. So let's get into it. Number 1, I want to point out something which I don't think would be the proper word to describe someone. Blake describes Sun as earnest, which I'm thinking to myself, like, have I been with the same series? Like, okay, I know Blake is in the verse and all that, but have I been watching, like, the same thing? But the way Sun looks, he looks like a stalker. Like, if you go back, okay, if you go back previous season, all that with Sun following around Blake, he looks like a stalker. He looks like someone trying to force Blake to go down a certain path against her will, basically, or, you know, not listening to her whatsoever. He was potentially being a stalker. That's what he was doing. Now, he had good intentions. I'm not saying he didn't. I'm just saying when you look at his character, I wouldn't necessarily call him earnest. That's not the word I would describe him with. But however, that is what Blake described him as, saying he's very earnest, and then she laughs. So yeah, that's very interesting. But besides that, though, let's talk about Adam. So Blake, she acknowledges what Adam is. He is the very meaning of spite. He is someone that, you know, destroys people. He ruins them. The people he is around, he slowly just breaks them down, and that's what he's been doing to everyone around him. For instance, like Ilya and what you almost happened to Blake, he is someone that is very toxic. He just damages everyone that's around him. He's very spiteful. Blake is known this, and she was basically expressing her feelings towards him and what has happened since, you know, she left him a long time ago. So it's very interesting to see her viewpoint, how she feels about each individual. But like I said, there wasn't a whole lot of progression overall. The only thing that scene really did, in terms of just progression-wise, was just to let us know a little bit more about the world building, letting us know why people do not want to help out, you know, the Belladonnas or anything, because, you know, they have left, like, the other parts around the world just to arrive here to where they don't have to fight. They could just, you know, be free, peace, and all of that. They don't have to worry about anything. So it makes a lot of sense why nobody wants to sign up and help out other places around the world. That was some good world building and characterization to the area that they're currently in. But besides that, there wasn't really a whole lot going on. So let's move into the second convo. RWBY and Oscar. Now, as I've already said, Oscar is a very fascinating character because it's very sad when you think about what is going on with this man. This man is losing his very self. He's losing himself. I mean, he will still be there once Oscar and him officially merge, but he will no longer be himself. And so, it's sad that he's losing everything he had. He's technically not free at all. And it's just a sad existence. Overall, it's just sad. And Oscar being angry and wondering, like, is he ready, or why can RWBY be so strong, it kind of was a little bit weird how it came out of nowhere, but at the same time, the emotions I can understand. I mean, he's very scared. Obviously, he has never had to experience this in his life, and so obviously emotions would be racing. If I was Oscar, though, I'd be, questioning, like, I'm losing my sense of self. I'll no longer technically be me. I mean, yes, Ozpin and him will merge, and he'll retain everything. Ozpin will change for the most part, but it'll still be Ozpin. It won't really be Oscar anymore. So, if I was Oscar, I'd be worrying more about that than, being ready to fight and stuff. So, yeah, but it was a very emotional moment, especially when RWBY started to talk about what she has been through. And it shows that RWBY has not forgotten. She hasn't forgotten what has happened in the previous volumes. She realizes what they lost, and she showed a very mature side to her, which is very rare, honestly. I mean, when we think about RWBY as a character, she is very childish in a lot of different areas throughout the series, but there's only very few times where we see her very mature, and this was one of those times. RWBY had this look to her. She had this entire atmosphere coming off of her to where she was being very mature when she was talking to Oscar. She's like, we lost everything. I used to have this friend, Pyrrha, she died, and I also lost Penny. She died just because to make a statement, and she was explaining the details of how she wishes she could have spent more time with him, how she could have, managed to have a little bit more time, but she didn't, and she can never go back to that because she's already lost him. And I know for a fact the way this scene was done, it was to reflect on the entire convo with Sun and Blake. That's obvious what Rooster Teeth is trying to do here, to kind of reflect with the emotions and meaning of the first convo into the second combo, and I just gotta say, though, it still was really good. It was really good, even though it was obvious what they were trying to go for. It was just a great way to showcase that RWBY is changing. I mean, I don't know how I feel about RWBY getting all this screen time with Oscar, though, because if there's one person I want to see Oscar talk with, it's John. Now, I know I'm a John fan, I've already mentioned this many times, but it feels like these scenes would have a little bit more impact if John was to talk with Oscar, because John lost a lot. He lost a lot. I mean, he lost Pyrrha, and yes, I know RWBY lost Penny. The thing is, though, when it comes to RWBY losing, Pyrrha, it wasn't that big of a loss to her compared to John, because when you think about it, RWBY didn't have a lot of interaction with Pyrrha. Only a couple of scenes. It wasn't really that much at all. And, I mean, there obviously could have been some off-screen stuff that we never saw, but we don't really know about it. So the thing is RWBY never really had much of an interaction with Pyrrha. Yes, she was her friend and all that, and yes, she cared about Pyrrha, but overall, though, if there's more weight to this, if we want more weight, I feel like this conversation with Oscar should have been with John, because John, we know he's very sad. We know when this man looks at Pyrrha's armor and all that, when he was thinking about by himself, you just could see by the way he looks, he's always unhappy. So, I really wish that Rooster Teeth, instead of having RWBY communicate with Oscar, it would have been John and Oscar. It just, the emotions would have been there. I mean, if he was to talk about Penny, that would have been cool, but I feel like John would have been a lot better example with this combo. Now, judging by the way this is going, I'm assuming Rooster Teeth is setting up something with, Oscar and RWBY to be like some form of combo in the future, to be very important. I mean, judging by the way they're trying to make it to where they have some chemistry. That's what Rooster Teeth is doing. They're putting this chemistry out there to show that these two can work together, they understand each other. So, yeah, that's something that Rooster Teeth is definitely trying to push with these latest episodes ever since Oscar was officially added to the cast. So, yeah, anyways, let's move into the last part of the episode, which is the brothers talking to Ilya. So, Ilya, she is very different from what we would expect. I mean, we thought she was probably redeemable, and in some ways she still is, but there's other sides, especially of her, that showcases that she is definitely not all there. What I'm getting at is the main convo many have had about this series and the White Fang. Can the White Fang be redeemed? Is there some form of redemption that can be happened, or can't happen for the White Fang? And after this episode, and after seeing the details, and seeing what, Ilya thought about it, and then the brothers and all that, it's very obvious that the White Fang are not redeemable. And the reason why I say that is because it's not just Adam doing things behind the scenes, being sneaky and, you know, removing the previous leader of the White Fang and doing these other things to start like a race war with Haven and stuff. It's not just that. Other members, lower members, are also a part of this. Like Ilya is a part of it, and we got to see her expression and reaction after she found out what happened to the previous leader of the White Fang. She's like, a necessary sacrifice. And you saw where she was just, you know, very stone cold, didn't care much. And then you have these other people come in and it's like, hey, you know, I got rid of the person that was a messenger. He's in the ocean. So it just shows that everybody a part of the White Fang, it's like a disease. They're corrupted and they're not necessarily like redeemable whatsoever. It's not just Adam causing the problem anymore. He may have been the heart of it, the start, and the heart of the problem and the core, but it's no longer just him anymore. It's the entirety of the White Fang. It's just too deep, the roots are too deep, and they're, you know, corroded and all that, and that's, you're just not going to fix that. The entire organization just needs to be destroyed, and it's not redeemable. And if I'm looking at this properly, if Ilya dies, that's the last redeeming part of the entirety of the organization. So yeah, she's probably the last person, part of the organization that is truly a good individual, that's not willing to, you know, kill people and start race wars, because as soon as the Belladonnas were mentioned to possibly be assassinated, her entire outlook changed. It doesn't seem like she's completely on board with what Adam wants, which is very interesting. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what Ilya does. If I had to assume from terms of writing standpoint, I'm going to assume she's going to die, because there's a lot of death flags she was given. I feel like she's going to try not to kill the Belladonnas, and then she's going to die for them, and then that's going to start a whole thing to where the Belladonnas and, you know, Blake and all that want to take down the White Fang even more now. Something like that could potentially happen. So, anything else I need to cover? I'm trying to think here. Oh yes, the brothers. I want to talk about the brothers real quick, okay? So after this episode, it's very obvious that even though the White Fang, they're very corrupt and they're not really redeemable anymore, this episode goes to show that not everybody a part of the White Fang completely agree with Adam. Or in this case, they don't believe Adam is the say-all, go-all, and, you know, do-all. They don't believe he is the leader that they possibly need till the very end. If he doesn't suit his role, they're willing to just get rid of him, and that was stated by the brothers. So this lets us know that there is a faction inside of the White Fang that think that if Adam just doesn't do the proper thing for them, they'll throw him under the bus. Just like that. So they're not just following Adam just to follow Adam. They have their own personality and motives as well. So very cool stuff. So that's about it when it comes to this episode of RWBY. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, how you felt about this week's episode. Did you enjoy it? Did you hate it? Please be honest in the comments below. If you enjoy my content, please subscribe. And if you like this video, please leave a like. Love you guys. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.